When we moved to Bloomington-Normal, I worked actually for an ENT group here, and physicians have a tendency to want to see the patient, make the diagnosis, and here we go. So when you're working with people with hearing loss, it's a much longer journey, and they were somewhat impatient with that. Seeing me spending a lot of time with elderly people, that's how many times are we going to go over how to put that battery in there, and so it kind of evolved then that two other audiologists who were professors at Illinois State University and myself approached the doctors and said, how about if we form our own practice within the same building that you are, and then we can take the time that we need to with our hearing impaired patients. So that's what we did in 1990, and it was pretty avant-garde. There weren't very many audiologists in private practice. It was really a pretty big leap of faith, and audiology can be a fairly expensive endeavor because you're buying those sound booths and a lot of sophisticated equipment, and we were turned down by several banks, almost kind of laughed out of the bank by one banker. You think you can make a living testing people's hearing? And then of course the three of us had to put up all the equity of our homes, our kids' college savings, and so that gives you a good incentive to work hard. Well, a lot of what we had to do was try to educate Bloomington-Normal, McLean County area about what an audiologist is. I mean, people knew what an oncologist was, what a dermatologist is, and there was a lot of things going on with hearing aid dealers that were salespeople. They didn't have the academic background. So we really tried to emphasize a lot of that difference in a professionally trained individual to assess your hearing.
I think the education that Deb started off with the community, like she's saying, that was the way in. The foot in the door was the education. And I've had friends tell me that some of our radio commercials are like public service announcements because they feel like they learn something every time, because we're covering health topics that, people don't realize that their ears are connected to their head, but they don't think that their ears have anything to do with the rest of their body. Why are you asking me about my heart condition? I'm here for hearing aids. And so I think that's what is continuing to challenge us as providers, is continuing to educate the public. But you've always stressed.
I always liked the one that showed all the textbooks piled up.
Yeah, all the education to go into doing something like that. So I think that's what's really important, and what BNA's done is trying to educate and protect the community and their ears.
Today we talk a lot about small businesses and female-owned or female-run businesses. I actually had worked for a private practice audiologist in Tennessee, and you talk about promoting women. This man was really not on the in the feminist movement at all, and I saw so many things that I didn't like. So I always would, when my husband would joke with me, he said, those were all things to teach you how to do it right. And I think that's a great thing about BNA. It has, from its beginning, been a female managed independent practice. And then when I bought out my partners, and I was the sole owner, Natalie's the sole owner. So it's kind of a female success story, I think. A lot of employers in Bloomington-Normal face this, is you don't have people who want to really stay in Bloomington-Normal. Right out of college, they finish their degree, they want to go to Chicago, they want to go to St. Louis, they want to go to the big city. And I would sit down with them and have a talk about, we're looking for some continuity here. And they would come, and then they'd be in my office crying later and saying, oh, I miss my mother, or I've got a boyfriend here, or, so there was this constant turnaround, and that wasn't good for patients. They established a relationship with someone, and so I really started to think differently about how I wanted to choose people for the practice. And Natalie has roots in Central Illinois, family, went to Northern, highly respected university in our field. And Natalie had the unique experience of having been a foreign student in Norway And I was like, well, she can go to Norway, and I don't think maybe she's going to be, I miss my mom and I have to go. I remember asking her if she needed some extra time, and like, are you going to move in with your family for a while? No, I don't. I want to have my own place. I've been out on my own. I'm not moving back with mom and dad.
Well, my dad said he would move me anywhere but home. Well, so when Deb interviewed me, I was working at a hospital. And the way a hospital runs a program is way different than a private practice runs a program. And I think that was one of the things that you do feel a little disconnected in a hospital. And it probably every hospital is a little bit different, but at least the one I was at was very large. And, you'd see a patient and you just say, call me if you need me. And Deb was running a completely different model here in town where, they would call and remind people, they would send them postcards and,
yeah, we remembered people's birthdays.
Yeah, you would send cards. You watch the obituaries.
Yeah.
There's all these things where to know what they need in their lives to be successful, you have to know about them. And, that's something that audiology is always trying to improve to show that it's not just this piece of equipment, you put it in your ear and off you go. So Deb's always had that
a process,
approach. Yeah, it's always it's not one appointment and you're done. It's a relationship.
And audiology was really a big part of my life. Having built that practice, was kind of like having a third child. And so I really had to examine myself about, can I do this? Can I step away? And I actually surprised everybody in the office one day and said, I'm going to be gone for a month. And they're like, what? What do you mean you're going to be gone for a month? Like, I just need to have some time to think this out. And, I became a grandmother and, I love to garden, and so I said, it's time to, start stepping away. The question was, there are franchises, conglomerates that want to come in and buy from you. And I was certainly approached by those people. But to me, that was taking a step backward, she genuinely cares about the patients. And that was my primary concern, certainly I had worked hard and, I made a lot of sacrifices, especially the first 10 years. I knew there was going to be somebody in place that the patients felt comfortable with, that really cared about the field of audiology. Natalie's been active in some of the academy activities as well over the years. And she's a Central Illinois girl. Us Midwestern girls, we're a different breed.
Don't give up easy. But Deb had faith in us, and all the staff was staying. I think that was the other thing, that it was that I think that was the hardest thing, was I was going from being these people's colleagues to now I'm going to be their boss. And I was younger than several of them, which was going to be something that was challenging. But I think me being there, I'd been there 7 years already. And, that helped. The patients knew me, they were all happy for me. And I think that's another thing that, like Deb said, she could have sold it to a franchise, but, they're not going to get the kind of, those franchises are like what you were talking about, quotas and bottom lines, and you make your appointment 15 minutes, not a half an hour. And, that's not in the best interest of the patients. And I think they see that too in our operation, that we do have these relationships with them and they appreciate us as much as we appreciate them. One
of my favorites was a gentleman who was a campus minister, and he had strong listening needs, being around students, and, students have a tendency to talk fast, and one of the hearing aid manufacturers chose our facility as a test site. And so I was asked to pick out several patients, and we put the hearing aids, we asked them if they would be willing to participate in this study and give us opinions about whether they really thought this was better than what they currently had. Were the manufacturers heading in the right direction? And I knew at the time that if in the end they said, this product is better than what I'm currently wearing, they were going to be given those hearing aids gratis. Of course, I couldn't tell them that, to make it a fair study. And so I remember this gentleman and he was really he was keeping a little journal and he was just, writing everything down. And he really noticed a huge improvement and he did not, as in that position, he wasn't very well paid. He lived kind of he and his wife lived a little bit of a frugal life. And when I told him that those hearing aids were his to keep, he broke down and cried. So that was a pretty special moment. And wrote me a lovely note, wanted to write to the manufacturer and tell them what a difference this made in his life. So that was one that really stands out. Another one that stands out is the woman who took her in-the-ear instrument out and set it on the coffee table and then started eating some peanuts and swallowed the hearing aid. And that was real interesting. And then we had to do a biomedical hazard return to the manufacturer to get it repaired. So yeah, there's lots of stories, as Natalie knows.
There's a patient that I was a female working at State Farm and had noticed that she was starting to have some trouble, but didn't think it was that big of a deal. And so came in typical, just wanted to get an exam. We did the exam. She was a candidate. We fit her, and it was just one of those moments where you turn them on and she just let go, like, oh my God, she was crying. I can't believe this is how it's going to sound. And that was probably 8 years ago now. And I've gotten her another set since then. So they've aged out and she needed to replace them. And we kind of talked about, do you remember when we turned them on the first time? And she's like, oh yeah, I don't think I'm going to have that again. And so she got these new ones and oh my gosh, we turned them on and she just started crying again. And she's like, I'm happy. I promise I'm happy. And
happy tears.
Yeah. And so just the way that it can change people in an instant. I think that's the best part of what we do, where they just, it seems like a miracle to them, but we knew all along that we know we can do these things. But a lot of people you don't know that as it slowly slips away, the hearing, and then you turn it all back on, the way it just opens the world back up to them. It's starting to see people change their opinions and put greater value. It's that generational thing. And the population that Deb was primarily working with, they saved their pennies because you never knew when the next catastrophe was going to happen. And you couldn't spend that much money on something like that. And now we're working with a generation that they want to remain active with their girlfriends and go out and do things and be in their communities, and they need to hear to be able to do that. And so we're starting to see those people advocate for themselves in needing that help. And everyone loves to listen to things loud, so there's a little bit of job security in that.
Well, and I know the other thing we didn't mention that we've done is we've saved a lot of marriages.
Yeah.
I would have the gentleman come in and say, my wife says I come home with hearing aids ordered or don't come home. That there's all this miscommunication going on and the TV's so loud and, I'm handing the phone over to the wife because I can't hear on the phone. So yeah, I think that's another thing. We have a little notch in our belt. We've saved some marriages.
Well, or you've helped people start dating again, because that's the other story. The spouse has passed away and they want to start seeing these men or women socially, and they go to dinner and they can't hear and they feel embarrassed, and so their lady friends tell them they have to get hearing aids, or or vice versa. And so
Well, and the hearing protection thing is, I would just go around town and sometimes have to be like, I can't look. These people are running jackhammers and, and it's just so much more commonplace to see people wearing hearing protection. Even, there's a lot of equipment, they're wearing the muffs. And so, yes, we had some success moving that direction.
1990, do you think it'd be around for 30 years?
I did. I would have to say, I didn't think I'd be doing it for 30 years. But I will say that it grew much more than I ever expected. I think it's extremely important. And, the physicians know who we are. And more, we would have somebody going in for a yearly annual physical or whatever, or just saying, I think I'm having some trouble with my hearing, and they would say, well, then you need to go to an audiologist. There wasn't any question, go to one of these nationally advertised franchise. And so we started getting people steered in the right direction. And so, a lot of times we felt like, we were helping the consumer to spend their money wisely, for sure. And as we talked about, changing people's lives, and just adding audiology to the vocabulary.